there's a lot of people that wouldn't be okay seeing things like that, and never wanted excited to get out there and see what other things I would see. And I don't know if that makes me a little bit like strange.
No stranger than the rest of us, I guess.
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. This is where we share stories for inspiration, entertainment, and encouragement, because we all know emergency nurses have the best stories. Now here's your host, Kevin McFarland.
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing. I'm Kevin McFarland, and I'm your host. In today's episode, I have an interview with an old friend of mine named Emily. Me and Emily go way back to the beginning of her healthcare career. Emily's the kind of nurse I love to interview for this show because she's got a lot of heart, is super passionate about nursing, and has a lot of wisdom to share. Wait till you hear about her introduction to healthcare. It's a crazy story that I will never forget, and I don't think you will either. So sit back, enjoy the episode, and thanks for listening. So let's start with just that. Start by introducing yourself to the audience. Tell them who you are, what you do, a little bit about your background, so they can kind of figure out kind of who you are.
My name is Emily, and I've been working I got my nursing license in 2005, and I've been working as an RN, primarily in emergency medicine, probably for about, 12 years or so. And then about a year and a half ago, took a job as a house supervisor in a small hospital out here in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Why the switch from emergency nursing to house supervisor?
Why did I switch?
Yeah.
I was thinking that after about so many years, I was getting a little bit worn out with emergency medicine. It's always been my passion, but I was a little bit ready to see what else I was capable of doing. And it seemed like a really good opportunity to see how every area of the hospital works and how it kind of comes together, because I've bthink so specific in my field.
It's a really great role in that you see everything. I mean, it's very operational, and it's very, it makes, I think having an ER background really prepares you well for that role.
Yeah, it definitely helps you to think outside the box and to be able to put out fires. And I actually think that we're probably, ER nurses are probably some of the most qualified people to be a house supervisor because of our ability just to think outside the box and come up with solutions. So that's been really good. And I've noticed, like, when you're seeing other nurses on the floor and stuff, they're also very limited to just what their knowledge is. So it's easy to come in there and feel like a hero when you have a cab voucher.
Yeah. You're like, wow, that was easy.
Or you know how to set up transport.
Or, one of the things that I do in my house supervisor role, I start IVs all night long.
Yeah.
And, they'll call and be like, nobody has gotten an IV on this person. She's been here for like 3 or 4 days. And you're like, okay, well, let me go look. You go look, you come back out and you're like, hey, do you need blood? And they're like, did you get it? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, wow, that's awesome. And you're like, that's cool.
Yeah, you feel like a hero.
Totally. How did you get your start in nursing? And why did you choose nursing?
Well, that kind of goes back to you, right? I remember, actually, you're one of the pivotal people in my life that helped me to make a different decision, because I was going for my paramedic. And I went in for my EMT, and you were, I think, an assistant at the time in the class, or helping out somehow.
I think I was teaching another class, and we were just kind of commingling classes occasionally.
Yeah. And I told you that I wanted to be a paramedic. You were curious back then too, and you said, no, don't do it. You're going to burn out in 5 years.
Yeah.
Be a nurse.
Yeah.
And I actually thought about that for a really long time. And I was like, it's going to pay more, and it's going to give me, longevity, and I'll be able to get a job anywhere. And so I decided, honestly, that conversation had a lot to do with it. I decided to probably change it up a little bit and go a different direction.
That's awesome. That's super humbling to think that you had like any kind of influence in someone's career. That's really cool. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's actually the truth. So there you go.
That's cool. And at what point in your nursing career were you like, yep, this was the right choice for me?
Well, ironically, it was when I went through nursing school, and I was not happy. All through nursing school, no matter what like rotation I did, I was like, no, no,
Nobody,
no.
nobody's happy in nursing school. So
Yeah, but I was looking for my fit and I couldn't find it. Like pediatrics, I thought I would love. I didn't like it. And then when I went through after you graduated, you had like this ability to do the residency program. So I did a residency program. I did oncology, I did a cardiac unit, and I did ER. And when I went into the ER, it just hit me instantly that was it. That was where I knew I needed to be. It clicked. Everything worked together. It worked with my ADD, it worked with my passion for emergency medicine. Also, I think I went into nursing wanting to be able to help outside, like my friends and my family. It was always on the back of my mind. Like, how would I help them if something happened?
That's funny.
And so did you ever feel that way?
I think I did. I mean, I think one of the things that I've always admired about good ER nurses is they're very generalists, right? So they know a little bit of everything, and they're not, they're not going to know maybe as deep as, they'd be like, hey, tell me everything you know about colon cancer. And you're like, I don't know. It's bad. I don't know. But they're generalists. And like, if you get hurt, if you're on a plane and somebody calls and says they need medical help, you got that. You're like, I know how to, I can at least keep you comfortable. We can keep you alive, and we'll be able to do some stuff.
For hours.
and
but no, like that is it.
Yeah.
I wanted to be helpful.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. And I think, when I finished nursing school, before I went to nursing school, when I was working as an EMT in the ER, like I got there and I was like, I found my fit. These are my people. Like they get me, I get them. This is my crew. This is who I'm supposed to be with. Like I could do life with these guys.
Yeah. I mean, we're all a little bit funny. Our sense of humor is a little bit off. We're all fast paced. We all have a little touch of ADD. I agree, but it's a unit, a family unit for sure. And it's a lot of fun. And there's always really interesting things that you would never expect coming through the door that kind of keep you laughing and in dark moments.
Absolutely. Now you have a pretty good story about your first patient care experience. Do you want to tell that story?
About when I was an EMT in my EMT class?
Yes. Now,
so I was really excited about my EMT class, and I think it was just my basic, and my teacher said, if you get really good like grades, you can do a ride along. That's the benefit of doing that. So I tried really hard to get good grades. I don't know if I really got them or if he just had mercy on me, but they decided they would let me do the ride along. So I went on the ride along, and I think we were just parked in 20 different hubs.
Now was this your first experience in healthcare? Because like did you do healthcare before this?
No, never. I worked at AOL.
Oh gosh, you're dating yourself, but that's okay. Whatever, that's fine.
I mean, I worked at Google.
That's right.
No, so we had gone like, I don't know, I think maybe on 3 calls through the night. And one of them was like a homeless guy with a bloody nose. And I think one might've been a transport. I don't know. They were really basic. And I was kind of disappointed when I left because I was like, wow, this is just a lot of like sitting in a rig and not doing much.
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe not even 10 minutes before we were supposed to be released to go back. We got a call, like a man versus train. And we decided we'd go to it because we were close. So we went to that call. It was insane. It was the most, well, this is how you know you're an ER nurse, because I wasn't grossed out, but I was really intrigued by it. But when we got there, the patient had, I guess, attempted to I guess he was successful, but he killed himself laying across the train tracks. And when we got there, we ended up tending to the conductor of the train, because he was really traumatized by the scenario. So we've sat and talked with him for a while, but then our job was to go and kind of see about locating the body. So when we're walking through there, we ended up just seeing bits and pieces of the body. It was a tongue. I remember a scalp in a different spot, a foot just hanging out. And it was probably a good fourth of a mile that this person was spread around. But I mean, I really was not, I remember that when I went back to class, and I was kind of like a celebrity because I got to go on this super crazy ride along. But although I did see in my head for a few weeks, just kind of pictures of those things, I never felt like I couldn't cope or was super traumatized. I was mostly just like, wow, I can't believe that happened.
Seen some shit.
Know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like shock.
Yeah.
But then I knew. I mean, that was more of a confirmation. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Because how many people could see that and not? There's a lot of people that wouldn't be okay seeing things like that and never want to do it again. And I was just excited to get out there and see what other things I would see. And I don't know if that makes me a little bit like strange.
No stranger than the rest of us, I guess.
Yeah, but I think all the other emergency nurses would probably agree that the weirder it is, the more gross it is, the more excited we get.
So what I remember, I very clearly remember that story, and I'll never forget that the instructor was showing pictures because HIPAA wasn't as big a deal back then, and he was doing this little slideshow of these like super graphic, gory like pictures, and of course the class is like ooh and ah, and I'm sitting there going, one, that's kind of gross. And I just remember looking at you, and you were so young, and I remember going, are you okay? Like all this, the only thing that matters is like, are you okay? Are you good? Because damn.
It was heavy. That was heavy stuff.
That's heavy stuff. And I remember just being so worried about you. And I think I was doting over you for the rest of the semester. Like, hey, you good? You all right? Just because I was always worried about you, like going, holy cow. Because I mean, like, I don't know how I would react seeing that now with as much as I've seen. You're like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it was an interesting call. I think actually, ironically, instead of being really sad about that person, I was sad for the conductor. I remember feeling pretty sad for him and what he had witnessed and even to this day, and whenever I'm taking care of like patients that are dying, it's okay. It's fine to deal with that. It really doesn't, like, I can deal with somebody who passes away and moves on. But if their family comes around, that part gets
that's the hard part.
I know. I think that's the hard part for everybody. But then it becomes more, I guess, I don't want to say it wrong, but maybe more real. Like, oh, this person had a family. Oh, this person was a person.
Yeah.
They're not just my patient.
There was a post not too long ago in this group that I'm in. I think you're in the same Facebook group I'm in. And there was a post where a woman, posted that she was taking care of her trauma and everything was good. And, she was, they did a good job, but of course they didn't save this girl. But then her phone kept ringing, and it was like this song that was on her ringtone that like just hit her. And we all have little moments like that where you're like going, like every now and then, like shit becomes real, and you're like, God, holy cow, this is not just a body I'm doing compressions on. This is a mom, a daughter, a son, and it just kind of hits you a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably part of the reason that emergency nurses do what they do so well, is because most of the time when those things happen, the family members aren't in that situation. We're dealing with it with just that person. So when they're like, for example, when I'm a house supervisor and I'm up in the ICU and the family's surrounding them the whole week while they're passing away, I think, how do these nurses cope with all those things? Yeah.
Right. They're the real badasses.
Really, I mean, it's pretty true. Like, because that's what gets you is those other things. And it is the little tiny things that sometimes you don't think about that would affect you, like the ringtones or something that comes through that hits you for some reason.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That you aren't expecting.
It's crazy. Tell me a story about a patient that changed your practice.
I can tell you about one that changed my practice. And I think this, I guess there's two, they kind of roll together. I was working in Oregon in a hospital that wasn't a trauma hospital, it was a low acuity hospital. And I had two patients come in together. Both were stab wounds. And we weren't prepared for that because they were pretty low acuity hospital, like I said. So they had come in randomly, and the patient my patient was older and had a stab wound and basically looked right at me and said, "I have a second chest wound," and then kind of closed his eyes, and we quickly geared him up, put him on a helicopter and sent him out. And then he left. And so in my head, you think, well, he probably lived and everything probably worked out. I did what I could and I got him on his way. But then it turned out later that he passed away. And I just remember being the last person that he spoke to. And that was a lot to think about. Like, what did I say to him? Was I compassionate? Was I just focused on his IV? Did I say anything that mattered? And I didn't say anything that mattered to him. And so that was really difficult for me. And I think that changed my practice because now whenever someone does come in, I speak to them.
Yeah.
And I say something, whatever it is, something sympathetic or heartfelt or pet their head or something that where if they were going to pass away and I was the last person they talked to, that it would have been a moment of compassion and they wouldn't have felt scared or alone. And then there was a second patient, similar scenario, came in to a different hospital I was working at in Oregon. It was very rapid. I believe maybe they had I want to say maybe a meningitis. I can't remember exact diagnosis, but came in very sick within 15 to 30 minutes, got a huge rash, ended up crumping. And we, instead of letting the wife speak to him before he left, rushed him out and said, we'll let him talk to you later. And he passed away.
Holy cow.
And then that changed my practice too, because I feel like when you don't know when it's going to be their last moment, and to have taken that moment away from that wife has always sat with me really hard. So I do think about those things. And I do think that it's important that if it takes 1 second longer or 1 minute longer, that they give them a kiss or they say goodbye, or I'll see you after surgery, or whatever it is that they want to say, but that they have that contact with that one person. And if that person's not there, then I'll be that person to just give them some contact. So those two things I think have really revolutionized the way that I am a nurse. And it's not something that I do sometimes and don't do sometimes. It's something that has been my practice since those moments.
That's cool. You never know. There's so many patients that just blend together. I can't even tell you how many sore throat patients I've taken care of, how many broken arms, broken legs. But there's always those ones that stick out and they just change your practice. And that's something that those are the ones that stick with you.
Yeah, maybe some people figured that out early on. But, I started my nursing practice young, on the younger side, I guess. I wasn't super young. Like I said, when I went into that situation as an EMT, and I was more excited than I was traumatized or, it was up until that point, I don't think I saw it not as a game, but more of a adrenaline rush than a realistic event that's actually affecting someone's life and their family's life and their futures. And so maybe that came with maturity, or maybe that just came with witnessing it in those circumstances. Or hopefully most nurses have that that sensibility before I did, but that is something that I thought was really powerful.
How do you convey that to new nurses? How do you try to then influence their practice?
Well, new nurses are my favorite nurses because we have the power to influence them. But I think one of the things that I've I try to do is, I've been doing it, 14 or almost 15 years now.
Yeah.
And I still feel like I've been able to, even though it's been cyclical, sometimes I've had less compassion than others. I try to show baseline compassion for people. And if I have a new nurse who's with me, then hopefully she sees that inside of me. And then that's how it's conveyed, just by example.
That's cool.
Spending time talking, cracking jokes, things like that. And I do like to remind, I do a lot of precepting. Training nurses is one of my favorite things to do. So whenever I get the chance, I always remind them to not lose their compassion for people.
That's cool. What's the best advice a mentor ever gave you?
Well, it wasn't a mentor. It was a doctor.
Okay.
He wasn't giving it to me. He was giving it to another doctor.
You just happen to listen? You just happen to listen and get something from it?
I was listening, and it changed. It was really powerful. So he said to another one doctor talking to another doctor, and he goes, I'm going to tell you something. He's like, always listen to a nurse if she tells you something's wrong, and never listen to a nurse if she tells you nothing's wrong.
Huh.
And I thought that was the most profound thing I've ever heard, because that's true. I mean, how many times have you dismissed somebody and then they're really sick?
Yeah,
But
it's true.
If we know when something's wrong. We know when someone's sick, and it's important that we are paying attention to be able to relay that information correctly to the doctor, and not to dismiss patients. So that was just something he had said, and I was like, man, that's gonna, I guess, affect.
That's gonna stick with you.
Yeah, I mean, don't you think?
Oh yeah, totally. I think that when I was a brand new nurse, in the pediatric ER, we had a patient, I'll never forget him, cute little kid, adorable little kid. And he just looked kind of puny and kind of sick. And I remember we started an IV on him, gave him some fluids and got his fever down, got him some Tylenol and stuff. And I remember the attending, who was a very experienced attending, was like, "Oh yeah, he's ready to go home." And I was like, "I just don't know. I don't feel real comfortable. He still looks kind of puny. Like he doesn't look good yet. Like, is there anything else we should do?" Or he's like, the doc was like, "He's ready to go home." And I was like, "I don't think he is." The doc goes, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Let's give him another bolus and see if he perks up a little bit." I go, "Because this kid's not perky at all." And he was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, I'm fine with that." So sure enough, we gave him another bolus. The next thing you know, the kid's running around the room, driving his mom crazy. And I was like, "Okay, now he can go." And the doctor was like, yeah, of course. Now he can go. You're right. And I was kind of apologetic because I was a brand new nurse. And I was like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I don't mean to challenge you, but I just felt like he needed a little more." And he goes, "Kevin, one of the things I've always learned is to listen to your nurses, because your nurses see the patient more than you do, and they're usually right." It's like, I go, it's probably true. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been so many times where you just catch stuff.
Yeah.
Like we had a guy who was going to be discharged from our hospital, and they had moved him into another room, and they were ready to let him go, and we had been hanging on to him forever. And they were getting a little bit irritated because he wasn't, leaving. And then I walk in, and he just coughs a little bit, and it's just this tiny bit of blood, just like a little bit, tiny blood clot. Like, I swear it was like a nickel. And I was like, what the heck? See, he's sick. I had gone with my gut. So we ended up putting an NG tube down and got like 700 of just blood out of his belly.
Holy cow. That's just crazy.
So that one little tiny thing that we noticed, I just noticed as the nurse. I went back and told the doctor, I'm like, yeah. And then, saved his potentially saved his life, You just never know. But
you never know. For sure. Tell me about a patient that touched your heart. A patient that you'll never forget.
I had a patient that touched my heart so much. There was this little old lady. She was older. She was probably 80, and her husband. And they had just gotten a diagnosis that she had bowel ischemia or bowel necrosis or something, to where she was going to have to go to the OR. And so we were preparing to take her there. And when I came back to go and kind of talk to her and her husband, the doctor comes out and she's like, she's decided not to go to surgery.
Wow.
And that means she's probably going to die in the next 24 to 48 hours. Like, she's not going to be alive much longer. And I was really afraid of going back in that room because I was still a newer nurse and I wasn't sure. What do you say? Somebody just made the decision, like, I'm going to let myself die instead of go to surgery.
Wow.
And so I kind of hesitated for a while, but I ended up going back in, and I just grabbed a stool and I sat next to her, and her husband was standing over her also. And I just said, how are you feeling about your decision? And she comforted me.
She's like, it's going to be okay.
She was. That's exactly how she said it. She said, it's going to be okay. I have such a great life. I love Jesus. My husband has had a great life. We were just sitting here talking about how great our life has been together and how happy we are about the things we've done. And she told me about her and her children, and and like, I can't help it. I'm tearing up. But I just thought that was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen from any patient. There was zero fear, which is not typical. And I thought, I hope that is me someday, that I'm not afraid to die, that I have peace about my life, that, you know what I mean? She had it right. She had done it right. And that's rare because I think most patients are somewhat afraid, and it was none. She had none. And it was genuinely none.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And her husband too. He was sick. I mean, you walk back in, they're just talking about their life, it just, and then I'll tell you another story, because I had this other lady who was dying actively, and her best friend came in to her. They were in the trauma room. I can't remember what had happened to her, but she was going to die, and she knew it also. And her friend came in, and they just laughed and laughed and laughed. And I just remember one comment that she made was like, well, I guess I'll cancel your dentist appointment.
You're like, oh, yeah, okay.
And I thought, oh my gosh, if I ever die, I sure hope my best friend is there just cracking me up. You know what I mean? And
right?
like saying silly things like that.
That's funny.
Because it was and she got to go and have peace.
That's awesome. That's really cool. You hope, I think everybody hopes that they're that brave and that sturdy in that moment. And I think that's all we can hope for. And you hope that when that time comes, you can look back and say, I did some good.
Right.
Yeah. And be okay with it.
Yeah. Sturdy is a really good word for that, because that's a rare thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. Do you look forward to that?
When you're done with nursing, what do you hope your legacy is? What do you hope your people who worked with you, people who you mentored, what do you hope they remember?
That's a tough question. I just hope, I guess, that they remember me as someone who had compassion for people and who was kind, because I see how easy it is to get damaged and to be dismissive of people and what they're going through. Mostly it's because you see it so much, like so many people addicted to drugs, so many people that are putting themselves in like these cyclical situations of just like, unhealthy lives.
Yeah.
That I do see that nurses, they lack compassion. They get burnt out. Right. And it makes sense. It does make sense. I see why it happens, and I think it's a fight to not become that way.
Yeah.
Because you naturally want to incline to that because it gets exhausting. But I don't want to be that person. And anytime I see myself veering that way, I try to stop it and remind myself that these are humans and it's humanity.
Yeah.
And we get a privilege to be able to love them and care for them when they're vulnerable and weak. And that's our gift. So I hope that's how I'm remembered, as somebody who had compassion for both the patients and the other nurses.
What advice would you give a brand new nurse starting in the emergency department?
I would say you're going to go through some periods where the first year you're going to think you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And then year 2 and 3, you're going to think you know everything.
Funny how that works.
And then after that, I think you'll balance out and realize that you can't dismiss things, and that it's important to keep your eyes open and look for make sure that you're looking for the things that might be, like that other people might be missing, and that you're thorough and careful, so that you can kind of balance out, I guess. Maybe I should put that differently, but
I like it. The last question I like to ask is a question called 3 things. What are 3 things an emergency nurse should always remember? And what are 3 things they can just forget?
Remember, as an ER nurse, that you're part of a team. It's not rising and falling on you alone. Remember that every patient matters. And remember to keep your compassion.
Yeah. And what are the 3 things that they should forget?
I mean, definitely forget nursing care plans. I still stick to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Forget mean patients.
See, I like that.
Because otherwise they'll take you down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They're not all pleasant, are they?
No, and some people are vicious.
Yep.
And forget being normal, because we're different.
We're different.
Once you've been an ER nurse for a while, you change. Your personality changes. You're not a normal person. Your perspective is going to change a lot.
I think you're right. I haven't been normal for a really long time.
It's true, right?
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. I really, 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 really appreciate it.
I'm so excited to hear what you put together.
You'll be one of the first people to hear what I do. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Facebook.
Oh, you're still here? What are you still doing here? The episode's over. Go leave us a 5-star review. Come back to the next one. All right, now, go along. Go about your way. We'll see you next time. Bye.